A week has gone by. No new qubit count records. No new quantum volume records. No speed up. No quantum advantage. Are you confused? Don't be. This is the Weekly Quantum World Detangled, Season 2, Episode 8. With my friends.
Hi, everyone. Denise Ruffner, VP of Business Development for IonQ. Happy to be here from Southern California. And Tommaso.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Tommaso from Entropica. Happy to be here from Singapore.
And I'm Whurley, CEO of StrangeWorks, speaking to everyone tonight from Austin, Texas.
Welcome, Whurley. A pleasure to have you on Weekly Quantum World Detangled. I think you're maybe one of our most famous guests so far, and we've had some big names, but I think everybody heard about you, met you, or knows something about you. So when I looked a little bit in your background to come up with something to talk about in our introduction, I had to Google and Google and Google, and a couple things jumped out at me. The first one, you don't talk much about your education, and we'll respect that veil of secrecy, but I found one tidbit. You studied electronic music in Germany, my home country.
Yes.
How did that come about?
So I talk about education all the time, but I never personally went to college. So I have a high school diploma from Temple High School, which clearly is one of the best high schools on the planet. That is not true. That is patently false. So I don't avoid that topic at all. In fact, Bob Metcalf, who some of the listeners may know, is inventor of Ethernet and everything, is a good friend. We have done 3 major conferences where he represents I went to school, I did everything right in life, and I represent I kind of hacked my way through it, and we do that argument. So there's an open topic. But I did grow up in Nuremberg, in Germany. I was a military brat, grew up in Nuremberg. I played real football, and so it was great. And I love Germany. I love electronic music. I have a studio at home. I used to be in a touring band, actually. We opened for a bunch of big, famous funk bands. But the thing that probably, is closest to me was going on Volksmarch, playing football in Germany, doing I love everything Bavarian. And then when I became an Eisenhower Fellow in 2018, my assigned countries actually ended up being Japan and Australia. And at the last minute, Australia was switched for Germany. So I actually got to go spend several weeks back there and go everywhere that I'd visited as a kid. So I went to Munich and Frankfurt and Berlin and Dusseldorf, pretty much everywhere. So yeah, I loved it. It was great.
And thank you for respecting the football. There are only 2 countries on this planet that call it soccer. One of them is Japan, the Japanese version of soccer. The other one, the US. It is football. Knowing that you studied electronic music in Germany, what is the most influential band of the last 50 years?
Oh, God. Name one?
There is only one.
Oh, is there? Oh, is it Autobahn?
I
got you. But,
New York Times called them the Beatles before the Beatles were the Beatles.
Are you sure there's only one?
There's only one. Kraftwerk, the original band that invented it all.
I like Kraftwerk a lot. They would be on my list of top 10. I don't know that they'd be number 1. I'm a huge prog rock fan, as many people in Germany are. I like the Rush and all of the more technically proficient bands. I like the electronic music as well, but bands like Yes and Rush and all of those old bands, they kind of blended those worlds, right? They had all of the electronic music and apparatus, and they mixed it into kind of that heavy rock show, which German bands are great at, by the way.
They used to be. Music used to be better, right? Maybe Tommaso is still too young, but for us 3, music used to be better. When I kept digging through your background, when I first heard about you a few years ago, people said, "Oh, Whurley is this amazing entrepreneur, and you have an amazing track record." But what surprised me, you actually started as an engineer, a master inventor, and I think you had another engineering role. How did that come about, and what's a master inventor?
So a little backup. Before I joined IBM, and after years got to that point, Denise knows all about. Sorry, Denise, we're talking about IBM, so you're just gonna be like, yawn. No, I started at Apple. So my first tech job was hacking Macromind Director and making CDs work, and so that landed me a job at Apple. And I started at Apple by answering the phones, like, "Thanks for calling Apple. This is William. How can I help you?" And then I got promoted to manage the international training programs and then into R&D. And when I left Apple in 1999, I was like, IBM sounds exactly like Apple's culture, so I should probably go there, which is, of course, a joke. It was total culture shock. And a master inventor is simply one of many things at IBM. You've got fellows and master inventors and all manner of awards where you reach a certain patent plateau. So that means that you have a certain number of patents. Each plateau, when I was doing it, was 4. And when you get to a certain number of patents, then you can become a master inventor if those patents have been actualized and realized. So I did a bunch of patents around internet security and other stuff that actually ended up making IBM money. And so my joke is, outside of IBM, is that, like, I made IBM a lot of money. So they're like, "You, sir, are a master, but no money for you." So I didn't get any of that money, but I did get this awesome title.
It's a very cool title, and thank you for sharing a little bit more about your beginnings and acknowledging that Kraftwerk is the #1 band in the last 50 years. Let's dig more into...
In the top 10. In the top
no arguments, I'll just edit it out.
Wir fahren auf der Autobahn. Wir fahren auf der Autobahn.
Let's dig into your professional ventures. Denise, take it away.
Sure. Well, I can't start without mentioning that Whurley is the author of co-author of one of my favorite books, which he's autographed for me. And there it is, Quantum Computing for Babies. Great book. If you haven't read it or haven't gifted it and you're watching this podcast, you need to order it right now. It's a great book. And it's a great gift. So...
André, why are you not pimping my book, man? Thank you, Denise. That was amazing. Love you.
Love you too. So Whurley has been in the quantum world for a number of years, but he operates in the stealth mode. So we're very grateful that he's appearing on the podcast tonight. And Whurley, could you just start off and tell us a little bit about what StrangeWorks does?
Sure. So look, and I'm going to use some terms, and I'm going to be pretty hardcore because we hear these terms in quantum everywhere. So I want to start by kind of setting the ambiance, if you will. I wrote Quantum Computing for Babies. That does not make me a physicist, nor does it make me Richard Feynman or Peter Shor's new competition, okay? Which is why it freaks me out, because a lot of people, when I meet them in quantum, they're physicists and they download like PyTorch or something, and then they're like the world's greatest software developer. And I'm always like, oh, it's way harder than that. So we are a little different. Most of these companies are formed by academics who are very accomplished in their field, very smart, with tons of respect for them. There's a part of quantum that's not getting enough love. That's in the area of community, the real tough community. That's in the area of working on how we build collaborative infrastructure, spanning layers across all of these different things. And that's in the area of basically starting to build the abstraction layers a lot earlier than some people may think we need. And so the idea with StrangeWorks was a little different. First company we did was acquired by Accenture. We spun one out of that company that was acquired by Zynga. Those were our first exits together as a team. That was for fun and profit. And we had a great blast. The second company, we wanted to be that mythical founder. We wanted to be that person that's saving the world, that's changing the world. And really, if you think about it, Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine are kind of like romance novels for startup nerds, right? And so that was good. We did well. Goldman Sachs acquired that company on its 1-year anniversary. For the third company, I wanted to be my last startup. I want it to be something important. I want to change the world. And I'm not after a Nobel Prize. I'm not after making billions of dollars. I'm after any of that. If we could get quantum computing technologies democratized, evenly distributed across all of the people that could take advantage of it, some of which have no computer skills, all of which have no quantum skills, I think that would really drive the industry. I feel like the machines were being made and designed in a vacuum. that is to say that without a million software developers, 10 million software developers, 100 million software developers, we're all kind of guessing and solving problems we want to solve that may or may not align with education or enterprise or a bunch of other people. And so that's where we started. We started with, let's build some standards. So we founded the IEEE Quantum Computing Standards Working Group. We got, IBM and D-Wave and Cole Quanta and a bunch of people to kind of join that. There's a standard on nomenclature that's about to come out. It's being ratified. And then there's a standard on performance benchmarking. So people can judge these different hardware resources in the same way. The second thing was, okay, we've got some standards. Why do we need this nomenclature standard? That doesn't make sense. Here's the deal. I talked to 100 enterprises in our first year. Every one of them thought a qubit was something different. Is it annealing? Is it physical? Is it logical? Is it topological? They don't know, right? And so we wanted to get that and then build community. And then we built the community. Now we have 6 primary communities we work with, a few that we fund. The biggest one, of course, is the Stack Overflow community, the Stack Exchange community. That is 10,500 people, about 2,000 of them active on Monday, about 1,700 yesterday. It's a very active group. So you build the standards, you build the community, and then you say, what do people need us to build? Don't design it in a vacuum. And so we built what we thought people needed, and then we put it into beta in March of 2019. And we've since then been taking feedback from thousands of people and adding features and adjusting. And, we're certainly not going to build the perfect software on the first or second go around. I mean, if software worked that way, we'd still be using Word 1.0, right? Like you got to constantly get feedback and improve it. And so the idea is simply this. Take quantumcomputing.com, which is the first thing we're launching, and build a place where anyone can come and be welcome and do everything from looking at code and reading protocols and learning about it, to deploying it to simulators that we host, to experiment, to going all the way out with some of the high performance computing centers we work with. We manage the entire relationship. So we work with the hardware vendors, we work with everybody. They just have strange works, and that's how they access it. I just want to see quantum be real. It's not an industry right now, guys. It's just not. There's not hundreds of millions of dollars flowing into it. There's not millions and millions of dollars from an enterprise. Government funding, of course. Lots of other funding, sure. And that's not to say that the money's not coming into it. That's just to say that we need some fundamental stuff. Who's going to build the way to manage the time control across multiple machines for an enterprise? Because it's not a quantum problem. It's a horrible problem that, that's our experience. We're just software developers. We have 2 amazing physicists, our chief science officer, Cesar Rodriguez Rosario, and my lead physicist, André Ochoa. They're awesome. I love them. But we're a little different company in the space, is we're not trying to pretend to be physicists. I'm never going to come out and be like, I'm a quantum expert. I'm a software expert, and I hope to build tools that each of you use and that everybody listening to this can take advantage of. I'd like to keep those tools for free. So, little history lesson secret that'll be very interesting that I've never told to anybody in any of the interviews. We started as a Linux Foundation project. I went to Jim Zimlin and Brian Behlendorf and everybody, because those are my friends and my background's all in open source. And I got IBM and D-Wave and 1QBit and a bunch of people together. And because we're on an interview, let's just say not everybody sees eye to eye. And so it wasn't going to happen. And out of frustration, I just told Jim, I think I'm just going to take all the work I've done and make it a company and just kind of push it and get it done. But I'd love to push as much into open source as possible. I love to be a big consumer of it. And I'd like to see the knowledge and the sharing just free, so that we can get millions and millions and millions of developers into the ecosystem, because it's good for me, it's good for Denise at IonQ, it's good for Tommaso, it's good for you. That's what we need. We need density. Because right now, my first 6 years of looking at quantum and watching it was going to conferences, and we all know this is true, and seeing the same 100, 125, 150 people, right? Like, people are like, why don't you go to the QCware conference, Q2B? And they're like, oh, you must have something, or they said platform, you say platform, there's a competition. Look, there's no need for competition right now. We should all be teaming up and working together. The reason I don't go is because I haven't been to any other conferences, because same 150 people. I don't know that I'll learn something new about a science that is mind-bogglingly hard to comprehend, but I don't know that I'm going to make any progress for the company. So I've been actually going out to other events. So I spoke at a keynote at VivaTech in France. I spoke at the International Supercomputer Conference in Germany. All of these, we've done now 170 plus speaking engagements in the last 3 years. at places where they're adjacent to quantum, but they're not our group and they don't know it. And every time we do, I feel like if we just pull 5 or 10 or 20 over, that's good for all of us in the community. And that's our focus. And the software product is flexible. I mean, we're building plumbing that we put an interface on, and some of the features we've built in now, I probably won't even see realized, or people won't even realize for a year or 2 years. And that's okay, because quantum is not a sprint and it's not a marathon. It's like an ultra marathon. Even if the technology happens and we reach all our goals and IonQ has 1 million qubits or whatever, we still have a problem, and there's no quantum workforce. There's no real standardized college education program. There's nobody trying to teach us in high school. There's so many things missing, and that's where we as software developers want to kind of pick up the charge and help lead in that area.
So Whurley, is the StrangeWorks software out? Can people beta test it now?
So they can, but we approve all the beta testers. You can go to quantumcomputing.com, you can sign up. However, and I will announce this, I guess, very soon, you'll not have to have us approve you for the beta, and you can just sign up. And then we'll probably officially launch it. I mean, again, I don't know. People want me to do it, a few of our partners wanted me to do it in October, a few of them in September. Again, I think January, that's what I'm feeling. And that sounds so lackadaisical and so weird when you're a startup, because people often don't understand how startups should work. And so they want to get a bunch of news. They want to get proof points because you raise money on it. And we have the luxury of being in a different position. We have a $100 million fund we're associated with. We've already had a bunch of exits. Doesn't mean we're the Rockefellers, but we also can be a little bit more picky and choosy and take a little more time. It's an unfair advantage, but again, I offset that by spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, time and all included, millions of dollars on stuff that will never help the company directly, because I just love quantum. I want to see this community grow. You know what I want? I want the Apple ecosystem to be a quantum ecosystem, not managed by one player where everybody has a share and we're working together, because we're never going to win a Nobel Prize for finding some new drug or optimizing, the path to Mars or any of these things, but somebody using the software might. And nobody can tell me that just because you went to a good university, you somehow have more ideas or better ideas than somebody who couldn't go to a great university or who's still in high school. And so
can I interrupt you for a second?
Go for it.
Because I think if you don't mind, Denise, can I take it from here?
You can. Oh, well, I can't say that. Denise.
Yeah, sure. Go on.
Thanks. Just because you said something that I've been wanting to ask you for a while, since we started the conversation, is an interesting one, and it's not my quote. Doesn't matter whose quote this is, but it's something I heard many times. Is the following one. So you said at the beginning that you don't have formal college education. Fine, I honestly don't care, of course. But I heard from many people in the community, that only if you have like a strong academic background, PhD in quantum information theory, yada, 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 you should be allowed, whatever that means,
of course,
to have a voice in this industry that doesn't really exist, right?
Of course.
So let's be a little controversial, since André, before we started recording, told me I have been more tame than usual lately. So let's be a little less tame. What do you think of that statement?
Hours with you in the car and other stuff. I'm ready for it. Bring it,
cool.
Tommaso.
So what do you think of that statement? Is quantum computing only for like boring people like me with a formal education, or not?
I think that statement is unwise and unjustified and unfair to millions of people who have the talent. Here's how you should say it, in my opinion. If you want to participate in quantum now and make a material impact, you most likely have to have a formal education in physics. There is no doubt. But let me tell you the thing that the quantum industry doesn't seem to be in tune with, and that is the history of the industry that we are in. So I remember way back in the day, studying under my mentors in the early 90s, that when computers came out, you had to be an electrical engineer with an electrical engineering degree or a PhD in electrical engineering to program a computer. And at that time, they thought, no one will ever do this unless you have this, right? Obviously not true. When the internet came out, web developers made hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to build websites. Wix now does it for $9.99. Here's two truths of quantum that will happen. Hardware will be commoditized no matter how hard they fight to do it. It's why Kia makes a BMW that costs $120,000 for $30,000. Okay, it's what happens to hardware. It's just natural. Now, that doesn't mean that the company's value go down or they can't make money. It just means over time, the price of things go down, right? I mean, I can remember buying at work at IBM an $8,500 laptop. And, you know, you can get one from Amazon for $200, right? It's just what happens. The other side of that is that all things will go to open, because when you have a limited source of knowledge and you have things restricted and you have a mass community that wants them, things get out whether you want it to or not. These algorithms won't be patented. You can't patent math in the US. And I understand how people are trying to get around that to make algorithm patents. But, you know, I used to be a registered patent agent. I've done plenty of this. And so it's like, sure, those patents will get invalidated because Bank of America doesn't want to use Chase's algorithm, doesn't want to use Goldman's algorithm, doesn't want to use Morgan Stanley's algorithm. They want their own stuff, or they want to take open source, which they're all huge consumers of, and apply that through some engine that they've made unique. But no, look, it's a fair statement to say, if you want to program a quantum computer right now and you don't have an education in physics or are just some naturally major physics person, that's a problem. There's zero doubt of that. Does it mean that people who don't have that education shouldn't be able to participate in the space? I think that's unjust.
I agree with you on that. And it's great that you often speak about community. You kind of hinted at the difficulty of bringing together the different players, or at least part of the players in the community. So what do you think is missing in that sense? Do you think is still maybe even too early to think about community in quantum computing? It sounds like you don't. It sounds like for you is a big thing.
Yep.
But is there something very specific or very important that you believe is still missing from this likeness and community?
Proof that quantum can do anything better. That would be amazing. Like,
fair point.
I mean, that would be amazing. So, like, I absolutely can identify that instantly. It's like, show me that it works better than some classical infrastructure in some way and let me be specific, that is useful to an enterprise that has a pain point that aligns with that they will pay you money for, because that's an industry, and we don't have that right now. That's just honesty. We'll get there. And everybody who's in the game right now, I believe and I hope will be successful and make it. I'm glad to see more funding coming in and all of these things. But like, we need to be able to go into a CIO and an enterprise and say, this is your problem. This is you got a data lake, you got this, whatever we come up with. And if you do this on the IonQ machine that Denise has, guess what? It's better, it's faster, it's cheaper. That's what the enterprise has to buy by default, just based on the way that they operate. So when you think about charging millions of dollars for, tens of millions for a computer or millions of dollars for service for a year or whatever, this is not sustainable for an enterprise. It doesn't matter how much money they make. They're all mostly publicly traded companies. They're all driven by specific financial rules, and they're all trying to focus on what is the ROI, because they're all incentivized, just like we are in our startups, with shares. And those things directly go together, right? It's kind of like that old adage, nobody got fired for buying IBM, right? Good news is we don't have that in quantum. I mean, IBM is almost on a level footing with IonQ and everybody. They got more engineers, they got more money, they got all that. But what's wonderful about this industry and what I love about it is I can't participate in it, because there's almost no way for you to be like the thing, the top. We're not there yet. We're not in the days of AMD versus Intel. We're in the days of little vacuum tubes versus mechanical gates or something, right? Like, we're still early. I'm counting on everybody on this call to make that happen faster, though, just so you know, no pressure.
We try to do our best. Actually, let me push you a little bit back on what you were saying before about what you guys do at StrangeWorks. And this is really just to get a nice answer from you. So you're building standards, you're building, well, let's focus on the standards actually, and on the software engineering part.
Sure.
So do you think there is a risk that by creating all these concepts and software for quantum computing with a very strong classical computing background, you might be bringing some of the idiosyncrasies or the very unique classical aspects of it to quantum?
I do not, because we've specifically chose to take the role of being a facilitator. So our contribution is only through our physicist and through other physicists in space that we've agreed. And that's how we protect against that. Because you're right, that classical thinking, that could easily get rolled in.
You could easily get into that, and then, yeah.
But the way we've handled it, everyone doing it is a very highly qualified, you've got Cesar on our team and Andrew, you've got, Bowie Wald, you've got, all of these, Jerry Chow and Jake Mbetta both contribute. And there's like 35, 40 people now around these two standards. I am the only person that is not a physicist, and I'm staying out of it and letting the physicist run it and manage it to avoid exactly what you're saying. Because I do believe that you could easily influence things in a way that maybe we don't want. I see quantum as this point in time. Quantum will change computing more in the next 10 years than it has changed in its entire lifetime. I truly believe that. And so we don't want the von Neumann architectures and the classical thing. We don't want any of that, right? We want the new thinking and the new way of looking at problems. And all I'm trying to do with the standards in the community is provide an open area where everybody has an equal voice, where they can do that, and where the good ideas hopefully float to the top and available for everybody. Look, in 5 years, there'll be quantum competition. We'll all be, I think the enterprise will be spending reasonable budgets. Everybody's going to be looking for how they make money for their startup or their company, and IBM and Microsoft and Google and everybody's going to be like, well, we're the big guys, so we want to own it all, right? And a bunch of us will be like, well, screw the big guys, we're the new hot startups, and that's fine. But we're not there yet. The next 24 months for sure, 36, I'm fairly confident, probably 48 should be about all of us helping all of us. How can we help each other? Because look, you take a major oil company, you take a major finance company, they don't spend money with Tommaso, they don't spend money with Denise. Maybe they spend money with André or me. Maybe they don't. Every customer is going to have a different set of criteria, a different reason they pick it. And especially in quantum computers, when you talk about all the different ways you can make a quantum computer from a physics standpoint, and all the different ways you can deploy it and everything, that just makes it even more this proliferation of choice. And so, hey, we're going to lose somebody to a QC or Zapata or Microsoft or Google or somebody. Sure. And they're going to lose somebody to us. And that's a market. But right now, we need to be helping everybody out, because if we don't, we're going to fall into another big quantum winter, which I believe we're in the middle of right now, or maybe the beginning of, right? Valuations are falling dramatically. Rigetti's down round was pretty severe. D-Wave just had their valuation cut by hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a sign, guys, from the market that people are like, thanks for the hype. I don't really understand what the quantum computer does. We're going to sit and wait, right? And that's not good for any of us. But if we all help each other out, we work on those proof points, we get things out there, we have all our evangelists, not for ourselves, but for quantum. All evangelists, not for ourselves, but for everybody else. Every day I have phone calls where I talk about Denise, right? And her new job. And, oh, maybe IonQ is the person you should talk to. I talk about everybody but Tommaso, and that's because André, when we were in the car, he was a little touchy-feely for me. It was a little too much. And so I'm not going to send any business his way, because then he might think he needs to thank me. And Tommaso, I don't need your things. We're good, buddy. We're totally good.
Tommaso deserves all of our thank every day.
Thank
we
you,
love him.
Whurley, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
And for
André,
the record, no oil money yet, and I will only take it if it's for carbon extraction or other green energies. Whurley, the Marcel Proust Quantum Questionnaire. 12 questions. The goal is, answer from here, not from here. Okay. And rapid fire, one-word answers. Maybe a sentence. Maybe a sentence if it's a really good answer. But
I'll try to get to all one-word answers for all 12. Then I have to fly to Singapore, and Tommaso has to buy me a drink. But don't hug me like last time. I was just uncomfortable. It's okay. Please.
You shouldn't say that in times of social distancing, but we'll look past that.
We still could hug. The good old days. The good old days.
André, I would hug Tommaso even in times of social distancing, because that guy is just a good person, and he's one of my favorite people in quantum. And I give him a lot of crap, but the fact is, if more of us were like him and doing these things and inviting everybody and being so open, I think we would all be a lot further. I hope that out of this, the people viewing it, I hope they all are like, yes, let's go all work together, and we'll compete later, right? No big deal. We know we're going to compete, but God, stop stabbing each other in the back right now. We don't have anything to compete over. Fire your questions. I'm ready.
Talking about personality and good people, Whurley, what is the principal aspect of your personality?
Transparency.
The quality that you desire most in an entrepreneur? If you have to think about your one-word answer for a minute, that doesn't.
I'm trying to think of one word, but it's basically people who take risk. Entrepreneur means to take the risk, and so many entrepreneurs don't, and then they wonder why they're not making anywhere. I mean, it's a tough job. Please continue.
Risk reward. How about scientists? Your favorite trait in a scientist?
The ability to communicate complex topics simply. I like Carl Sagan. I grew up with him. I love it. I love all the scientists who can take things and make anybody at your local grocery store understand it. That's my favorite type.
What would you say is your best virtue?
Can we switch from virtue to sin? I might have like 4 or 5 one-word answers.
The next question.
I don't know. Let's get to the next question. I honestly don't have an answer. I have no idea.
All right, your principal flaw.
Oh, me. I am the flaw in the matrix, so it's totally fine. And we're all our own worst enemies, and I am the king of that.
We love the matrix. It makes life more fun. You've answered the next question at length, but let's try it again. What do you appreciate most about working in quantum?
The opportunity to make a better world for my kids. I mean, that's it.
How would you do that if not as a quantum entrepreneur?
Biohacking or potentially robotics.
You just mentioned Carl. Who is your favorite scientist?
That's a toss-up. I love Carl Sagan, and less of a scientist, but very scientific, James Burke. And I would be hard to choose between the two. I loved Connections. If you've never seen it, go look it up. It's probably the most wonderful science and theoretical series ever produced.
Who is your favorite entrepreneur?
Michaela from Me and the Bees. She's from Austin. I met her when she was like 7 or 9 or whatever, and she learned about bees dying, and she started a company to produce honey sustainably and do all this. And she went on Shark Tank and she did everything. And I love it because I believe we should teach entrepreneurship in like middle school and high school. And I think that everybody would be much more prepared for life if we did.
1,000,000%. Back to quantum. What's your favorite quantum computing modality?
I can't help it.
Whurley, you better answer this right.
I know. No, I thought this might come up and I have an answer. They're like the little Lebowski urban achievers, and probably are all of them. We love them all. I mean,
one day I will get an answer to this question.
Why don't you ask me which of my children is my favorite?
To me, I love topological. It sounds so clean.
I'm going to go more than one word. Here's the deal. Ion trapping. I think it's going to make the most progress in the shortest amount of time. I have questions about whether it meets some natural limits, right? And you may need the superconducting stuff. I'm not the biggest annealing fan, but Nishimori was one of the first people I met and taught me a lot about quantum when I was researching it. And you know, I got to respect all of that. Topological seems fascinating from a mathematics standpoint, but also seems like maybe a ways off, if ever, right? But you know, I do like them all, because when we look at thousands of people using all of them for different things, you start seeing clusters of data. You start seeing optimization being mostly on annealing and chemistry going over here and so on and so forth. So, you know, hard to say. But if I had to guess and be put on the spot, I'd say Denise and IonQ are absolutely number one. And for any science work, Tommaso, obviously the man. André,
always a great choice. We have
you're hosting. I can't do that blatant of ass kissing. I got to leave you out. I'm sorry.
You're welcome to become a sponsor of our podcast. We'll talk about that. 3 more questions.
Shoot me an email, because this podcast is part of community, and that is something I invest in. So I'd be happy to help. Go ahead.
3 more questions. You've answered them all already, but maybe we'll get a different spin. What is your quantum dream?
I don't want this as the dream, But if you haven't read this awesome book, my friend Matsumoto-san, who used to be the strategy officer of SoftBank, has a book called The Day AI Becomes God. And he has a very controversial theory, which is essentially that much like the Kree in the Marvel comics, we should have computers that can make complex decisions objectively. Now, we all know about cognitive bias and all the reasons that will happen. But when I see that in his book, when I see that in the movies, what I really see is computing being used to make a loving, equitable society and take care of the planet. My biggest dream I've encapsulated in a new project, which I won't announce till next year, but I will hint at it here because you guys have been so amazing. It's called Climate with a Q, because I'm obviously a marketing genius. And I think that, you know, it would be climate change, basically combating that, geoengineering, all the things that you could do with this massive compute resource to make this planet livable. I got in trouble in Oslo, Norway last year. I was with an astronaut and they're talking about going to Mars and everybody's like, oh my God, Mars is amazing. It's like, right, but if we took the $20–30 billion you're going to put into that and we just fix some of the shit wrong here, like this planet, we wouldn't need to leave, right? And I'm not against going to Mars, but I'm also a big fan of taking care of what we have, you know, kind of bird in the hand attitude. So definitely environmental science would be my dream, that and climate change get really a big shot in the arm by quantum computing.
What would be your quantum nightmare?
Easy. We follow the path we're on, which is machine learning's path. I remember machine learning in 1984, and they were like, next year, it's amazing. And then like, you know, 84, 2017, 18, that would be my fear. Or, you know, maybe I should say the hard truth. I'm worried none of you will actually come up with that proof case for the enterprise, and this is all for naught. I have lost sleep and had nightmares about that.
I'm starting to sweat at the thought of it. Last question. Imagine we get there tomorrow and you own the first universal, completely fault-tolerant quantum computer. Who would you give it to?
Everyone. I mean, there'd be a massive queuing problem, but I would give it to everyone.
Whurley, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Marketing.
I appreciate you having me. I mean, I'm among like the actual quantum people right now. Like, this makes me feel good. It's a little energy that I'm like, yes, because you guys are really good. And Tommaso and Denise both. You know, I've interacted a lot more with them, André. But you guys to me represent this amazing part of the community, which is you're bringing everybody on here. You're distributing this information freely. You're building community around it. That we just need more of what you guys are doing every day. And I just love you for doing it. And I really thank you for even letting me participate.
Whurley said it better than I could say it, so I'll shut up. I will thank our sponsors, CQC, as well as my friends Denise from IonQ, also our sponsor, Tommaso from Entropica Lab. Grazie. Whurley, it was an absolute pleasure. This is Weekly Quantum World Detangled, Season 2, Episode 8. You are now detangled.